But we plan now for the opportunities and risks of revolutionary new technologies. I want to talk today about each of these decisions and the actions, in my view, we must take. To start, each of us in this body has made a commitment to the principles of the UN Charter. Stand up against aggression. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we could have stood by and merely protested. But Vice President Harris and I understood that was an assault on everything this institution is supposed to stand for. And so, my direction, America stepped into the breach, providing massive security, economic and humanitarian assistance. Our NATO allies and partners, 50-plus nations, stood up as well. But most importantly, I asked the people of this chamber to stand up for them. The good news is Putin's war has failed and at his core aim. He set out to destroy Ukraine, but Ukraine is still free. He set out to weaken NATO, but NATO is bigger, stronger, and more united than ever before, with 2 new members, Finland and Sweden. But we cannot let up. The world now has another choice to make. Will we sustain our support to help Ukraine win this war and preserve its freedom, or walk away and let aggression be renewed and a nation be destroyed? I know my answer. We cannot grow weary. We cannot look away. And we will not let up on our support for Ukraine, not until Ukraine wins a just and durable peace in the UN Charter. We also need to uphold our principles as we seek to responsibly manage the competition with China so it does not veer into conflict. We stand ready to cooperate on urgent challenges for the good of our people and the people everywhere. We recently resumed cooperation with China to stop the flow of deadly synthetic narcotics. I appreciate the collaboration. It matters for the people of my country and many others around the world. On matters of conviction, the United States is unabashed, pushing back against unfair economic competition, against military coercion of other nations in the South China Sea, in maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits, in protecting our most advanced technologies so they cannot be used against us or any of our partners. At the same time, we're going to continue to strengthen our network of alliances and partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. These partnerships are not against any nation. They're building blocks for a free, open, secure, and peaceful Indo-Pacific. We're also working to bring greater measure of peace and stability to the Middle East. The world must not flinch from the horrors of October 7th. Any country would have the right and responsibility to ensure that such an attack can never happen again. Thousands of armed Hamas terrorists invaded a sovereign state, slaughtering and massacring more than 1,200 people, including 46 Americans, in their homes and at a music festival. Despicable acts of sexual violence, 250 innocents taken hostage. I've met with the families of those hostages. I've grieved with them. They're going through hell. Innocent civilians in Gaza are also going through hell. Thousands and thousands kills, including aid workers. Too many families dislocated, crowding into tents, facing a dire humanitarian situation. They did not ask for this war that Hamas started. I put forward with Qatar and Egypt a ceasefire and hostage deal. It's been endorsed by the UN Security Council. Now is the time for the parties to finalize its terms, bring the hostages home, and secure security for Israel and Gaza free of Hamas' grip, ease the suffering in Gaza, and end this war. On October 7th, since October 7th, we've also been determined to prevent a wider war that engulfs the entire region. Hezbollah, unprovoked, during the October 7th attack, launching rockets into Israel. Almost a year later, too many on each side of the Israeli-Lebanon border remain displaced. A full-scale war is not in anyone's interest. Even if the situation has escalated, a diplomatic solution is still possible. In fact, it remains the only path to lasting security to allow the residents from both countries to return to their homes and the border safely. And that's what we're working tirelessly to achieve. As we look ahead, we must also address the rise of violence against innocent Palestinians on the West Bank and set the conditions for a better future, including a two-state solution where Israel enjoys security and peace and full recognition and normalized relations with all its neighbors, where Palestinians live in security, dignity, and self-determination in a state of their own. Progress toward peace will put us in a stronger position to deal with the ongoing threat posed by Iran. Together we must deny oxygen to its terrorist proxies, which have called for more October 7th and ensure that Iran will never, ever obtain a nuclear weapon. Gaza is not the only conflict that deserves our outrage. In Sudan, a bloody civil war unleashed one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. 8 million on the brink of famine. Hundreds of thousands already there. Atrocities in Darfur and elsewhere. The United States has led the world in providing humanitarian aid to Sudan. And with our partners, we've led diplomatic talks to try to silence the guns and avert a wider famine. The world needs to stop arming the generals, to speak with one voice and tell them, stop tearing your country apart, stop blocking aid to the Sudanese people, end this war now. But people need more than the absence of war. They need a chance to live in dignity. They need to be protected from the ravages of climate change, hunger, and disease. Our administration has invested over $150 billion to make progress and other sustainable development goals. It includes $20 billion for food security, over $50 billion for global health. We've mobilized billions more in private sector investment. We've taken the most ambitious climate action in history. We've moved to rejoin the Paris Agreement on day one. And today, my country is finally on track to cut emissions in half by 2030. On track to honor my pledge to quadruple climate financing to developing nations with $11 billion thus far this year. We've rejoined the World Health Organization, donating nearly 700 million doses of COVID vaccine to 117 countries. We must now move quickly to face Mpox outbreak in Africa. We're prepared to commit $500 million to help African countries prevent and respond to Mpox and to donate 1 million doses of Mpox vaccine now. We call on our partners to match our pledge and make this a billion-dollar commitment to the people of Africa. Beyond the core necessities of food and health, the United States, the G7, and our partners have embarked on an ambitious initiative to mobilize and deliver significant finance to the developing world. We're working to help countries build out their infrastructure, to clean energy transition, to the digital transformation, to lay new economic foundations for a prosperous future. It's called the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. We've already started to see the fruits of this emerge in Southern Africa and Southeast Asia and in the Americas. We have to keep it going. I want to get things done together. In order to do that, we must build a stronger, more effective, and more inclusive United Nations. The UN needs to adapt and bring new voices and new perspectives. That's why we support reforming and expanding the membership of the UN Security Council. Our UN ambassador just laid out our detailed vision to reflect today's world, not yesterday's. It's time to move forward. The Security Council, like the UN itself, needs to go back to the job of making peace, of brokering deals to end wars and suffering. And to stop the spread of the most dangerous weapons, of stabilizing troubled regions in East Africa, from East Africa to Haiti, to Kenya-led mission that's working alongside the Haitian people to turn the tide. We also have a responsibility to prepare our citizens for the future. We'll see more technological change, I argue, in the next 2 to 10 years than we have in the last 50 years. Artificial intelligence is going to change our ways of life, our ways of work, and our ways of war. It could usher in scientific progress at a pace never seen before, and much of it could make our lives better. But AI also brings profound risks, from deep fakes to disinformation, to novel pathogens, to bioweapons. We've worked at home and abroad to define the new norms and standards. This year, we achieved the first ever General Assembly resolution on AI to start developing global rules of the road. We also announced a declaration on the responsible use of AI, joined by 60 countries in this chamber. But let's be honest, this is just the tip of the iceberg, what we need to do to manage this new technology. Nothing is certain about how AI will evolve or how it will be deployed. No one knows all the answers. My fellow leaders, it's with humility I offer 2 questions. First, how do we as an international community govern AI? As countries and companies race to uncertain frontiers, we need an equally urgent effort to ensure AI's safety, security, and trustworthiness. As AI grows more powerful, it also must grow more responsive to our collective needs and values. Benefits of all must be shared equitably. It should be harnessed to narrow, not deepen, digital divides. Second, will we ensure that AI supports rather than undermines the core principles that human life has value and all humans deserve dignity? We must make certain that the awesome capabilities of AI will be used to uplift and empower everyday people, not to give dictators more powerful shackles on the human spirit. In the years ahead, there may well be no greater test of our leadership than how we deal with AI. Let me close with this. Even as we navigate so much change, one thing must not change. We must never forget who we're here to represent. We, the people. These are the first words of our Constitution, the very idea of America. They inspired the opening words of the UN Charter. I made the preservation of democracy the central cause of my presidency. This summer, I faced a decision whether to seek a second term as president. It was a difficult decision. Being president has been the honor of my life. There's so much more I want to get done. As much as I love the job, I love my country more. I decided after 50 years of public service, it's time for a new generation of leadership to take my nation forward. My fellow leaders, let us never forget, some things are more important than staying in power. It's your people. It's your people that matter the most. Never forget, we are here to serve the people, not the other way around. Because the future will be won by those who unleash the full potential of their people, to breathe free, to think freely, to innovate, to educate, to live and love openly without fear. That's the soul of democracy. It does not belong to any one country. I've seen it all around the world, and the brave men and women who ended apartheid, brought down the Berlin Wall, fight today for freedom and justice and dignity. We saw it, that universal yearning for rights and freedom in Venezuela, where millions cast their vote for change that hadn't been recognized. But it can't be denied. The world knows the truth. We saw it in Uganda, LGBT activists demanding safety and recognition of their common humanity. We see it in citizens across the world peacefully choosing their future. From Ghana to India to South Korea, nations representing 1/4 of humanity who will hold elections this year alone. It's remarkable, the power of we the people, that makes me more optimistic about the future than I've ever been. Since I was first elected to the United States Senate in 1972, every age faces its challenges. I saw it as a young man. I see it today. But we are stronger than we think. We're stronger together than alone. And what the people call impossible is just an illusion. Nelson Mandela taught us, and I quote, "It always seems impossible until it's done. It always seems impossible until it's done." My fellow leaders, there is nothing that's beyond our capacity if we work together. Let's work together. God bless you all, and may God protect all those who seek peace. Thank you.
Address by His Excellency Joseph R. Biden, Jr., President of the United States of America. I request protocol to escort His Excellency and invite him to address the Assembly.
My back. My fellow leaders, today is the fourth time I've had the great honor of speaking to this assembly as President of the United States. It'll be my last. I've seen a remarkable sweep of history. I was first elected to office in the United States of America as a U.S. Senator in 1972. Now, I know I look like I'm only 40. I know that. I was 29 years old. Back then, we were living through an inflection point, a moment of tension and uncertainty. The world was divided by the Cold War. The Middle East was headed toward war. America was at war in Vietnam. At that point, the longest war in America's history. Our country was divided and angry, and there were questions about our staying power and our future. But even then, I entered public life not out of despair, but out of optimism. The United States and the world got through that moment. It wasn't easy or simple without significant setbacks. But we go on to reduce the threat of nuclear weapons through arms control, and then go on to bring the Cold War itself to an end. Israel and Egypt went to war, but then forged a historic peace. We ended the war in Vietnam. The last year in Hanoi, I met with the Vietnamese leadership. We elevated our partnership to the highest level. It's a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the capacity for reconciliation. That today the United States and Vietnam are partners and friends, and it's proof that even from the horrors of war, there's a way forward. Things can get better. We should never forget that. I've seen that throughout my career. In the 1980s, I spoke out against apartheid in South Africa, and then I watched the racist regime fall. In the 1990s, I worked to hold Milosevic accountable for war crimes. He was held accountable. At home, I wrote and passed the Violence Against Women Act to end the scourge of violence against women and girls, not only in America, but across the world, as many of you have as well. But we have so much more to do, especially against rape and sexual violence as weapons of war and terror. We were attacked on 9/11 by al-Qaeda and Osama bin Laden. We brought him justice. Then I came to the presidency at another moment of crisis and uncertainty. I believed America had to look forward. New challenges, new threats, new opportunities were in front of us. We needed to put ourselves in a position to see the threats, to deal with the challenges, and to seize the opportunities as well. We need to end the era of war that began on 9/11. As Vice President to President Obama, he asked me to work to wind down the military operations in Iraq, and we did, painful as it was. When I came to office as president, Afghanistan had replaced Vietnam as America's longest war. I was determined to end it, and I did. It was a hard decision, but the right decision. 4 American presidents had faced that decision, but I was determined not to leave it to the 5th. It was a decision accompanied by tragedy. 13 brave Americans lost their lives, along with hundreds of Afghans in a suicide bomb. I think those lost lives, I think of them every day. I think of all the 2,461 U.S. military deaths over a long 20 years of that war. 20,744 American servicemen wounded in action. I think of their service, their sacrifice, and their heroism. I know other countries lost their own men and women fighting alongside us. We honor their sacrifices as well. To face the future, I was also determined to rebuild my country's alliances and partnerships to a level not previously seen. We did just that, from traditional treaty alliances to new partnerships like the Quad with the United States, Japan, Australia, and India. I know many look at the world today and see difficulties and react with despair, but I do not. I won't. As leaders, we don't have the luxury. I recognize the challenges from Ukraine to Gaza to Sudan and beyond. War, hunger, terrorism, brutality, record displacement of people, a climate crisis, democracy at risk, strains within our societies, the promise of artificial intelligence and its significant risk. The list goes on. But maybe because all I've seen and all we have done together over the decades, I have hope. I know there is a way forward. In 1919, the Irish poet William Butler Yeats described a world, and I quote, "where things fall apart, the center cannot hold, mere anarchy is loosed upon the world," end of quote. Some may say those words describe the world not just in 1919, but in 2024. But I see a critical distinction. In our time, the center has held. Leaders and people from every region and across the political spectrum have stood together, turned the page. We turned the page on the worst pandemic in a century. We made sure COVID no longer controls our lives. We defended the UN Charter and ensured the survival of Ukraine as a free nation. My country made the largest investment in climate, clean energy, ever anywhere in history. There will always be forces that pull our countries apart and the world apart. Aggression, extremism, chaos, and cynicism. A desire to retreat from the world and go it alone. Our task, our test, is to make sure that the forces holding us together are stronger than those that are pulling us apart. That the principles of partnership that we came here each year to uphold can withstand the challenges. That the center holds once again. My fellow leaders, I truly believe we're at another inflection point in world history. With the choices we make today will determine our future for decades to come. Will we stand behind the principles that unite us? Will we stand firm against aggression? Will we end the conflicts that are raging today? Will we take on global challenges like climate change, hunger, and disease? Will we plan now for the opportunities and risk of revolutionary new technologies? I want to talk today about each of these decisions and the actions, in my view, we must take. To start, each of us in this body has made a commitment to the principles of the UN Charter to stand up against aggression. When Russia invaded Ukraine, we could have stood by and merely protested. But Vice President Harris and I understood that that was an assault on everything this institution was supposed to stand for. And so, my direction, America stepped into the breach, providing massive security and economic and humanitarian assistance. Our NATO allies and partners in 50-plus nations stood up as well. But most importantly, the Ukrainian people stood up. I asked the people of this chamber to stand up for them. The good news is Putin's war has failed and at his core aim. He set out to destroy Ukraine, but Ukraine is still free. He set out to weaken NATO, but NATO is bigger, stronger, and more united than ever before, with 2 new members, Finland and Sweden. But we cannot let up. The world now has another choice to make. Will we sustain our support to help Ukraine win this war and preserve its freedom, or walk away and let aggression be renewed and a nation be destroyed? I know my answer. We cannot grow weary. We cannot look away. And we will not let up on our support for Ukraine. Not until Ukraine wins a just and durable peace in the UN Charter. We also need to uphold our principles as we seek to responsibly manage the competition with China so it does not veer into conflict. We stand ready to cooperate on urgent challenges for the good of our people and the people everywhere. We recently resumed cooperation with China to stop the flow of deadly synthetic narcotics. I appreciate the collaboration. It matters for the people of my country and many others around the world. On matters of conviction, the United States is unabashed, pushing back against unfair economic competition, against military coercion of other nations in the South China Sea, and maintaining peace and stability across the Taiwan Straits, and protecting our most advanced technologies so they cannot be used against us or any of our partners. At the same time, we're going to continue to strengthen our network of alliances and partnerships across the Indo-Pacific. These partnerships are not against any nation. They're building blocks for a free, open, secure, and peaceful Indo-Pacific. We're also working to bring greater measure of peace and stability to the Middle East. The world must not flinch from the horrors of October 7th. Any country would have the right and responsibility to ensure that such an attack can never happen again. Thousands of armed Hamas terrorists invaded a sovereign state, slaughtering and massacring more than 1,200 people, including 46 Americans, in their homes and at a music festival. Despicable acts of sexual violence, 250 innocents taken hostage. I've met with the families of those hostages. I've grieved with them. They're going through hell. Innocent civilians in Gaza are also going through hell. Thousands and thousands killed, including aid workers. Too many families dislocated, crowding into tents, facing a dire humanitarian situation. They did not ask for this war that Hamas started. I put forward with Qatar and Egypt a ceasefire and hostage deal. It's been endorsed by the UN Security Council. Now is the time for the parties to finalize its terms, bring the hostages home, and secure security for Israel and Gaza free of Hamas' grip, ease the suffering in Gaza, and end this war. On October 7th, since October 7th, we've also been determined to prevent a wider war that engulfs the entire region. Hezbollah, unprovoked, joined the October 7th attack, launching rockets into Israel. Almost a year later, too many on each side of the Israeli-Lebanon border remain displaced. A full-scale war is not in anyone's interest. Even if the situation has escalated, a diplomatic solution is still possible. In fact, it remains the only path to lasting security to allow the residents from both countries to return to their homes and the border safely. And that's what we're working tirelessly to achieve. As we look ahead, we must also address the rise of violence against innocent Palestinians on the West Bank and set the conditions for a better future, including a two-state solution where Israel enjoys security and peace and full recognition and normalized relations with all its neighbors, where Palestinians live in security, dignity, and self-determination in a state of their own. Progress toward peace will put us in a stronger position to deal with the ongoing threat posed by Iran. Together we must deny oxygen to its terrorist proxies, which have called for more October 7th and ensure that Iran will never, ever obtain a nuclear weapon. Gaza is not the only conflict that deserves our outrage. In Sudan, a bloody civil war unleashed one of the world's worst humanitarian crises. 8 million on the brink of famine. Hundreds of thousands already there. Atrocities in Darfur and elsewhere. The United States has led the world in providing humanitarian aid to Sudan. And with our partners, we've led diplomatic talks to try to silence the guns and avert a wider famine. The world needs to stop arming the generals, to speak with one voice and tell them, stop tearing your country apart, stop blocking aid to the Sudanese people, end this war now. But people need more than the absence of war. They need a chance to live in dignity. They need to be protected from the ravages of climate change, hunger, and disease. Our administration has invested over $150 billion to make progress and other sustainable development goals. It includes $20 billion for food security, over $50 billion for global health. We've mobilized billions more in private sector investment. We've taken the most ambitious climate action in history. We've moved to rejoin the Paris Agreement on day one. And today, my country is finally on track to cut emissions in half by 2030. On track to honor my pledge to quadruple climate financing to developing nations with $11 billion thus far this year. We've rejoined the World Health Organization, donating nearly 700 million doses of COVID vaccine to 117 countries. We must now move quickly to face Mpox outbreak in Africa. we're prepared to commit $500 million to help African countries prevent and respond to Mpox and to donate 1 million doses of Mpox vaccine now. We call on our partners to match our pledge and make this a billion-dollar commitment to the people of Africa. Beyond the core necessities of food and health, the United States, the G7, and our partners have embarked on an ambitious initiative to mobilize and deliver significant finance to the developing world. We're working to help countries build out their infrastructure, to clean energy transition, to the digital transformation, to lay new economic foundations for a prosperous future. It's called the Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment. We've already started to see the fruits of this emerge in Southern Africa and Southeast Asia and in the Americas. We have to keep it going. I want to get things done together. In order to do that, we must build a stronger, more effective, and more inclusive United Nations. The UN needs to adapt and bring new voices and new perspectives. That's why we support reforming and expanding the membership of the UN Security Council. My UN ambassador just laid out our detailed vision to reflect today's world, not yesterday's. It's time to move forward. The Security Council, like the UN itself, needs to go back to the job of making peace, of brokering deals to end wars and suffering. And to stop the spread of the most dangerous weapons, of stabilizing troubled regions in East Africa, from East Africa to Haiti, to Kenya-led mission that's working alongside the Haitian people to turn the tide. We also have a responsibility to prepare our citizens for the future. We'll see more technological change, I argue, in the next 2 to 10 years than we have in the last 50 years. Artificial intelligence is going to change our ways of life, our ways of work, and our ways of war. It could usher in scientific progress at a pace never seen before, and much of it could make our lives better. But AI also brings profound risks, from deep fakes to disinformation, to novel pathogens, to bioweapons. We've worked at home and abroad to define the new norms and standards. This year, we achieved the first ever General Assembly resolution on AI to start developing global rules of the road. We also announced a declaration on the responsible use of AI, joined by 60 countries in this chamber. But let's be honest, this is just the tip of the iceberg, what we need to do to manage this new technology. Nothing is certain about how AI will evolve or how it will be deployed. No one knows all the answers. My fellow leaders, it's with humility I offer 2 questions. First, how do we as an international community govern AI? As countries and companies race to uncertain frontiers, we need an equally urgent effort to ensure AI's safety, security, and trustworthiness. As AI grows more powerful, it also must grow more responsive to our collective needs and values. Benefits of all must be shared equitably. It should be harnessed to narrow, not deepen, digital divides. Second, will we ensure that AI supports rather than undermines the core principles that human life has value and all humans deserve dignity? We must make certain that the awesome capabilities of AI will be used to uplift and empower everyday people, not to give dictators more powerful shackles on the human spirit. In the years ahead, there may well be no greater test of our leadership than how we deal with AI. Let me close with this. Even as we navigate so much change, one thing must not change. We must never forget who we're here to represent. We, the people. These are the first words of our Constitution, the very idea of America. They inspired the opening words of the UN Charter. I made the preservation of democracy the central cause of my presidency. This summer, I faced a decision whether to seek a second term as president. It was a difficult decision. Being president has been the honor of my life. There's so much more I want to get done. As much as I love the job, I love my country more. I decided after 50 years of public service, it's time for a new generation of leadership to take my nation forward. My fellow leaders, let us never forget, some things are more important than staying in power. It's your people. It's your people that matter the most. Never forget, we are here to serve the people, not the other way around. Because the future will be won by those who unleash the full potential of their people, to breathe free, to think freely, to innovate, to educate, to live and love openly without fear. That's the soul of democracy. It does not belong to any one country. I've seen it all around the world, and the brave men and women who ended apartheid, brought down the Berlin Wall, fight today for freedom and justice and dignity. We saw it, that universal yearning for rights and freedom in Venezuela, where millions cast their vote for change that hadn't been recognized. But it can't be denied. The world knows the truth. We saw it in Uganda, LGBT activists demanding safety and recognition of their common humanity. We've seen citizens across the world peacefully choosing their future, from Ghana to India to South Korea, nations representing 1/4 of humanity who will hold elections this year alone. It's remarkable, the power of we the people, that makes me more optimistic about the future than I've ever been. Since I was first elected to the United States Senate in 1972, every age faces its challenges. I saw it as a young man. I see it today. But we are stronger than we think. We're stronger together than alone. And what the people call impossible is just an illusion. Nelson Mandela taught us, and I quote, "It always seems impossible until it's done." It always seems impossible until it's done. My fellow leaders, there is nothing that's beyond our capacity if we work together. Let's work together. God bless you all, and may God protect all those who seek peace. Thank you.
Distinguished guests, the President of the United States, accompanied by Gotham Championship Captain and Team Ambassador Ali Krieger.
Guys, how you doing? Holy mackerel. I like your ties.
You guys said thank you?
Daddy, you didn't tell me the president was going to talk to me. Please have a seat. Well, good morning. For the first time in National Women's Soccer League history, welcome to the White House of the 2023 championships, the Gotham FC. It's so good to be joined by so many friends from New York and New Jersey. Team owners, the Tisch family. There you go. God love you. We go back a long way. And led by Caroline. And the fellow team governors and investors, Ed, as well as the great Sue Bird. Was here a few years ago to celebrate Seattle Storm's WNBA championship, and she's simply incredible. No, you are. There you go, man. I also want to thank the founding team owners, good friends of mine, the Murphys, and particularly Tammy, to continue this, to be the champions for women's sports. They couldn't be here today because they're representing the great state of New Jersey on a trade mission abroad, but I also want to thank New Jersey's newest United States Senator, George Helmsley. Where are you, George? George, you don't get to take the trophy home. And of course, a special thanks to the incredible players. You know, one thing is clear, this organization is no stranger to adversity. In 2022, Gotham placed last in the entire league. There were doubts about turning things around, but you never gave up. You never gave up. And you kept the faith, as my mother would say. You retooled the roster, hired a new coach, something clicked, and after a tough season, you're in the final team to make the playoffs. But the saying goes, winners simply win. Back-to-back playoff wins, holding North Carolina and Portland scoreless, and then beating Seattle to win it all. The new Tiffany Trophy is won at a new home now in Gotham. Look, just yesterday you clinched the playoff spot, so maybe you'll be back here next year. Now, if you are, I won't be president, but ask if I can come and listen. What's really important is your championship win also set an attendance record. I think it's fair to say everyone watches women's sports. It's about time. I got some all-state soccer players, as well as goalie, as well as lacrosse champions in my family. And by the way, in my family, we have an advantage. All the women are smarter than all the men, including me. When when fans watch you play, they also see the power of the example off the field as well. It matters. I really mean it. You lead the way in providing sports medicine and health care focused on women. My wife is deeply involved in trying to make sure there's enough attention paid and research done on women's disease as men. As a matter of fact, we're going to the United Nations after this to make that very case. You helped establish the Players Association, fighting for the dignity of work all across the league. And most powerful, I get categorized as the most pro-union president in American history. I am, and I approve what you're doing, man. And your teammate Midge came to the White House of the U.S. Women's National Team to highlight the campaign for equal pay. That's happening too. Matter of fact, it's going to get unequal. You're going to be paid a hell of a lot more, I think. But let's be clear, and I mean this sincerely. I was raised by my best friend in the world, my sister. Anyway, won't get into all that, but I mean this sincerely. A woman can do anything a man can do. Anything a man can do, including being president of the United States. Let me close by thanking you all. You represent our nation with such dignity. You inspire all of us, and you really do. You're an inspiration. I bet you when you can't walk down the street in your hometown without some young girl coming up to you, just wanting to talk to you, just wanting to touch you, just wanting to hold your hand. It's amazing. And congratulations to the Bats of Gotham. You like being called the Bats of Gotham? You're so damn beautiful.
The baddies.
I like that. Look, I'm going to turn it over to the top bat. No, the top. To Allie, last year's team captain, who, by the way, I watched in 2015 win the World Cup when I was vice president in Canada. Allie, it's great to see you again, kiddo. The floor is yours.
Thank you. They're warm for you, so yeah. Mr. President and esteemed guests, thank you for hosting Gotham FC, the reigning NWSL champions. We are deeply honored to be the first NWSL team to receive this recognition, marking a pivotal moment for women's sports. Firstly, I have to thank my teammates for their grit and perseverance to enable us to be the champions standing here today. Starting the 2023 season, coming off of the last place finish, from worst to first, nobody backed this team to do what we did. Reflecting on my career, I recall times when women's soccer lacked coverage and support. Our progress since those days have been remarkable, from our humble beginnings to becoming champions. Both Gotham and the NWSL have seen tremendous growth, with more fans, greater engagement, and increased recognition. Yet despite these strides, we are reminded that our work is far from over. Every time we step on the field, we think of young girls who dream the future in sports. This moment is not just about titles or trophies. It's about paving the way for them. Being the first is historic, but it's even more important that we ensure we are not the last. We all know that we are committed to build on this momentum for future generations. As a token of our appreciation and commitment to advancing women's sports, we are delighted to present you with a Gotham FC jersey. We expect you to be wearing that under the suit soon, okay? Yeah, great. On behalf of my exceptional teammates and the entire organization, thank you again for this incredible honor and for supporting the growth of women's sports. All right. Thank you.
You know, I thought when I got to be president, I'd get to do things that I wanted to do, but my staff tells me what I can't do, but I'm going to do it anyway. All the young women, young kids out there that are out there, come on up and do this when we stand behind me when we do this. Come on. And the guys. Come on. What's your name? What's your name? Okay, come on, everybody. Come on, everybody, see.
So our head coach, Juan Carlos Amaros, and the championship 2023 MVP, Midge Purse.
Thank you. Well, I tell you what, your mom and dad are going to come see you guys.
Chairman of the Economic Club of Washington,
Can I have your
D.C.,
attention, please?
David
Can
M.
everybody please take their
Rubenstein.
seats? Okay, thank you. So the Economic Club of Washington is honored to have the 46th President of the United States as our special guest today. All of you probably know his background, but just briefly, for somebody that might have been under a rock for a while, let me just tell you a little bit about the President, our special guest. He was elected to the United States Senate in 1972 at the age of 29. You have to be 30 to be a senator, but he was sworn in after he turned 30 years old, and then served the United States Senate for 36 years. And he rose up to be the chairman of the Senate Judiciary Committee and then later the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And then when Barack Obama was selecting a vice president, he asked Joe Biden to serve as his vice president. He served 2 terms as vice president. And then in 2020, he ran for president of the United States and was elected, defeating the incumbent president. And I've known Joe Biden for a long time, and I would say first came to know him when he was the first senator, sitting senator, to endorse my then boss, Jimmy Carter, for president of the United States. Carter was running for president in 1976, and his first Senate endorsement was from Joe Biden, and they retained a close relationship. And I've retained a close friendship with him for a number of years, and honored to call him a friend. And it's my great honor to introduce now the 46th President of the United States, Joe Biden.
Thank you, David. In my household, we refer to David as the Washington Monument. Been a friend a long time. And not only thank you for the introduction, David, but thank you for your friendship. And thank you all for being here and allowing me to be here. Yesterday was an important day for the country, in my view. 2.5 years after the Federal Reserve began raising interest rates, it announced that it would begin lowering interest rates. I think it's good news for consumers, and it means the cost of buying a home, a car, and so much more will be going down. And it's good news, in my view, for the overall economy, because lower borrowing costs will support economic growth. And it's an important signal from the Federal Reserve to the nation that after repeated interest hikes to cool down inflation, inflation has come back down, and the Fed has switched to lowering rates to keep the country growing, economy growing. At its peak, as you all know, inflation was 9.1% in the United States. Today, it is much closer to 2%. It doesn't mean our work is done. Far from it. Far from it. No one should confuse why I'm here. I'm not here to take a victory lap. I'm not here to say a job well done. I'm not here to say we don't have a hell of a lot more work to do. We do have more work to do. But what I am here to speak about is how far we come, how we got here, and most importantly, the foundation that I believe built for a more prosperous and equitable future in America. So let's be clear. The Fed lowering interest rates isn't a declaration of victory. It's a declaration of progress. It's a signal we've entered a new phase of our economy and our recovery. You know, I believe it's important for the country to recognize this progress because if we don't, the progress we made will remain locked in the fear of negative mindset that dominated our economic outlook since the pandemic began. Instead of seeing the immense opportunities in front of us right now, this is a moment, in my view, for business to feel greater confidence, to invest, hire, and to expand. It's a moment for individuals to feel greater confidence buying a home, a new car, starting a family, starting a new business. We're creating jobs. Employment remains very low. Small business creation is at its historic highs. The economy is growing. The main challenge we've had has been a painful one, but it's been the pandemic and the inflation it created, causing enormous pain and hardship for families all across America. It's not true just for us, but for every major economy in the world. But now inflation is coming down in the United States. The fact is, it's come down faster and lower than almost any other world's advanced economies. So now, instead of looking at interest rates increases, interest rates are going to be coming down, and they're expected to go down further. And that's a good place for us to be. Now, a lot of people, as you all know, maybe you know a few, thought we'd never get here. When Kamala and I came to office, 3,000 people a day were dying of COVID, 3,000 a day. Millions of Americans had lost their jobs, their businesses, and the global economy was in a tailspin. 4 years ago, we inherited the worst pandemic in a century, the worst economic crisis since the Great Depression. In fact, my predecessor was one of just two presidents in American history who left office with fewer jobs than the day he came to office. The other, Herbert Hoover. When I came to office, there was no real plan in place, no plan to deal with the pandemic, no plan to get the economy back on its feet, nothing, virtually nothing. In fact, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office predicted we wouldn't see a full recovery until well after the end of my first term in office. But I refused to accept that, like many of you refused to accept it. I came to office determined not only to deliver immediate economic relief for the American people, but to transform the way our economy works over the long term. To write a new economic playbook. Grow the economy from the middle out and the bottom up, not just the top down. Put workers first, support unions to make sure workers have a bargaining clout they need to get a fair price to grow that pie. And after all, it's the productivity, they're the productivity baked into that pie, in my view. Leave no one behind. Foster fair competition. Invest in all of America and in all Americans. When we do things for the poor and they have a ladder up, the middle class does very well and the wealthy continue to do very well. We all do well, and we are doing well. Working families in the middle class are the center of the strong, equitable, and sustainable recovery. Here are the keys from the new playbook, in my view. Within the first 2 months in office, I signed the American Rescue Plan, one of the most significant economic recovery packages in our history. Not a single person on the other team, Republicans, voted for it. It delivered shots in the arm for vaccines to vaccinate the nation in one of the most sophisticated logistical operations in American history. I found it incredibly difficult to plan that. Without protecting our nation from COVID, our economic recovery would never have taken off. It also delivered immediate economic relief for those who needed it the most. An individual earning less than $75,000 a year received a $1,400 check. So a family of 5 earning less than $150,000 a year could receive as much as $7,000. And by the way, middle-class families like the one I grew up in, many of you grew up in, that is a game changer. That saved people's sense of being. It also prevented a wave of evictions, bankruptcies, and delinquencies and defaults that the previous crises weakened the recovery and left working families permanently further behind. I was determined to avoid what Secretary Yellen called the economic scarring that hurt so many Americans and left them behind in the past. We delivered essential funding to states and local governments to keep essential services moving, to keep teachers and first responders on the job, to keep small businesses open, and to build more housing. We also expanded the child tax credit to cut child poverty in half. With the Butch-Lewis Act, we took the most significant action in 50 years to protect the pensions of millions of union workers and retirees. Before we acted, workers faced cuts to their pensions. Now we're restoring the full amount of their pensions, including for workers who previously saw cuts. And there's so much more. But we also know the pandemic led to a surge in inflation all across America and the world, and the country, I should say. And the economy shut down and then opened back up in an unprecedented manner. Shipping had stalled, factories shut down, inflation grew worse after Putin invaded Ukraine, which sent food prices skyrocketing, energy prices soaring around the world. So we immediately brought together business and labor to fix the problem of broken supply chains and unclog our ports, trucking networks, and shipping lines. Remember those massive cargo ships stuck outside the port of Los Angeles, delaying deliveries and driving up prices during the holiday season? Remember that? We remember the shortage of baby formula and the crisis that caused? Well, we got supply chains back to normal. When we did that, inflation began to ease. Not solve, but ease. I also rallied our allies to stand against Putin's aggression. In the beginning, there wasn't a whole lot of support for that. I warned them all. I got clearance from the intelligence community to let them know when he was going to invade. They didn't believe it was going to happen. But he invaded exactly when I said he was. Led the world to realize that we're in real problem. And releasing oil reserve to stabilize global markets. By the way, our gas prices are now down to $3.22, lower than before the invasion. And $3 below $3 a gallon in 14 states, including Delaware. I can go home now, past the gas station. Energy production from all sources is now at record highs in America. Record highs. And unlike my predecessor, I respect the Federal Reserve's independence as they pursued its mandate to bring inflation down. That independence has served the country well. And by the way, I've never once spoken to the chairman of the Fed since I became president. It will also do enormous damage to our economy if that independence is ever lost. You know, my new economic playbook also rejects the long-held conventional view among economists, many economists, that we had to lower our ambitions to bring inflation down. After I took action to rescue the economy, we got relief to families that needed it. Some experts predicted that people that we would leave the labor market and not come back to work. They referred to this as the Great Resignation. Remember that? The Great Resignation. Well, to state the obvious, they were dead wrong. We now have the highest working age employment in decades. Other critics said it would take the loss of millions of American jobs and a decline in real wages and yes, the recession to get inflation back down. Possible, but I refuse to accept that. I believe, sometimes over the amazement of my staff, that we should seize the moment to finally invest in all of America and all Americans for decades to come. We did just that with what I call our Investing in America agenda. How can we have the strongest economy in the world without the most advanced infrastructure in the world? How can that be? That's why I wrote and worked so hard to pass the bipartisan infrastructure law. Most significant law in generations to modernize our roads, bridges, ports, airports, trains, buses, removing every lead pipe from schools and homes so every child could drink clean water, providing affordable high-speed internet for every American, no matter where they live, not unlike what Franklin Roosevelt did. Remember what he did? You don't remember, you weren't around, nor, by the way, I wouldn't. I'm old, but I wasn't there either. But he decided that rural America had to have access to electricity. The internet is as critical as electricity was during his period. I remember saying that to my younger staff, and they looked at me, well, what are you talking about? But look, we're growing our economy. Got more to do. We're improving our quality of life. We're literally building a better America because of all of you. In fact, Buy American has been the law of the land since the 1930s. And I have to admit to you, Congressman Carper, my buddy, I didn't realize that when they wrote the law in 33 about unions organizing, they also had a provision in there. Any money, it says any money the president is sent from the Congress to invest in an investment in America should use American workers and use American products. Past administrations, including my predecessor, failed to buy American. Not anymore. Kamala and I are making sure the federal projects building American roads, bridges, highways, and so much more beyond that, like aircraft carriers and tanks, they'll be made with American products, built by American workers, creating good paid American jobs. How can we be the strongest nation in the world without leading the world in science and technology? I mean, think about it. We walked away for a long while investing in science and technology as a government. During the pandemic, American people learned about supply chains. You know, I remember going home saying the supply chain, and my family, the supply chain. What the hell's a supply chain? No, but I'm serious. Think about it. It became common knowledge what we're talking about to the average American. And the shortage of semiconductors, those little tiny computer chips, smaller than the tip of your finger, that power everyday lives, from smartphones to automobiles to dishwashers to advanced weapon systems and so much more. Think about it, it takes over 3,000 chips to build an automobile. Remember the crisis when you didn't have access to them in the automobile industry? And by the way, we invented those chips here in America. And we still design the most sophisticated chips in the world. But over time, my predecessors thought it was better to manufacture those chips overseas because labor was cheaper. That's why they went overseas. The result, when the pandemic shut down those chip factories overseas, the price of everything went up because we didn't have enough chips here in America. We learned the hard way that one of the best ways to strengthen our supply chain is to make sure the supply chain starts in America. Starts in America. And by the way, if I get hold in the back there, that's why I have great relations with our European friends. But this is one where they go, whoa. That's why I literally wrote and signed the CHIPS and Science Act to bring manufacturing back home and so much more. As a result, private companies from around the world are now investing tens of billions of dollars to build new chip factories right here in America, New York, Ohio, Arizona, all across the country. You know, it takes time to build these factories. But the number of construction workers is way up and they're making good salaries. Already creating tens of thousands of jobs in construction facilities. But the American public's going, well, where's all this going, Biden? Because they expected this to happen overnight. You got to build the factories first. When these factories are finally built, we'll have tens of thousands of jobs running those factories, so-called fabs. As you all know, this is one audience I want to explain to. These fabs are bigger than football fields. Creating jobs that are going to pay over $100,000 a year, and you don't need a college degree. And it's going to generate such economic growth with the one outside of Columbus, Ohio, 1,000 acres. I call it a field of dreams. The old playbook was to go abroad, the cheapest labor, export American jobs, import foreign products. Our new playbook is we export American products and create American jobs right here in America where they belong. But that's not all. I wrote and signed the law, the Inflation Reduction Act, the most significant climate law ever anywhere in the history of the world. When I say I wrote, I actually did write some of this, as my daughter would say, with my own paw. Skeptics told me we couldn't get it done, remember? We couldn't get this done. There was no possibility of this. There wasn't a consensus. And if we did it, it would be too late and too little. But we did it with your help. $369 billion for climate and clean energy. More than ever happened in the history of the world. Not a single one of the opposition Republican friends voted for it. It took Vice President Harris to cast a tie-breaking vote in the Senate. The Inflation Reduction Act. It's going to help cut carbon emissions in half by 2030. We're well on the way, including, well, I won't go into it all, and creating hundreds of thousands of good-paying, clean energy jobs for American workers. I set up a climate corps, just like the Peace Corps. It's going to, you watch what happens with that. Lower energy costs for families with tax credits, to install rooftop solar and efficient energy appliances, to weatherize your windows and doors with high-tech insulation, more efficient heating and cooling systems, get a tax credit for doing it and grow employment and grow the economy. There's so much more. And again, many of you are doing it, you're the ones doing it, are creating these good-paying jobs. The Inflation Reduction Act also focused on lowering costs for prescription drugs. There was a law in America that I fought like hell as a senator, and a lot of others who did for a long, long time, to change the law. The only agency that could not negotiate prices was Medicare. For years, many other members of Congress fought for decades to change that and give Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices, like the VA was able to negotiate drug prices for veterans. Well, with the Inflation Reduction Act, we finally beat Big Pharma. And we finally gave Medicare the power to negotiate lower prescription drug prices. And now, many of the seniors have diabetes, as one example. But now, instead of paying up to $400 a month for that insulin, for their diabetes, they're only paying $35 a month. 35 bucks. And they're still making a hell of a profit, by the way. You know how much it costs to make that insulin? $10. T-E-N dollars. $10. Package the whole thing and get up to $13. By the way, if I had Air Force One sitting out there, I could get you in a plane and take you anywhere in the world, any major capital. Whatever prescription you have, I can get it for you cheaper in Toronto, London, Berlin, Rome, anywhere around the world. But it's just beginning. The same law says that starting this January, we don't have to obtain any new changes with the law, the existing law, every senior's total prescription drug cost will be capped at $2,000 a year, no matter how expensive their drugs are. Even expensive cancer drugs that cost $10,000, $12,000, $14,000 a year. These reforms don't just save seniors money, but equally important, they save every American taxpayer money. Just so far, these reforms will save American taxpayers $160 billion over the next decade, because Medicare won't have to spend that anymore. And by the way, that weight loss medicine is just getting going, man, that debate. Watch. All told, we're proving that we can bring down inflation while safeguarding hard-won gains in jobs and real wages in American workers. Today, a record 16 million jobs created, more than any other single presidential term. When I took office, more than 2 million women left the workforce due to the pandemic. If you listen to these other guys, they think women don't want to work. They don't know women in America. Oh, I'm serious. Watch. Watch, watch, watch. And speaking of watches, on my watch, we reversed the loss. We actually increased the number of women working by an additional 2 million women in the workforce. And by the way, we have the highest share of working-age women on jobs since 1948. And we started to keep track that back then. With wages up, incomes up for women workers, we've always believed women should be paid equally for equal work, and there's not a single damn job a woman can't do that a man can do, including being President of the United States of America. You all think I'm kidding. My younger sister used to be 3 years younger than me. She's now 20 years younger. Went to the same university, took the same courses. She graduated honors, I graduated. She's the one who should be. Anyway, 19 million people have applied to start new businesses. That's a record. And here's the thing about those new businesses. Every application to start a new business is an act of hope, It's an act of optimism, hope. More Americans have health insurance than ever before, and I don't think that should be something we should sneeze at. Everyone deserves basic health care. The racial wealth gap is the smallest in 20 years. Remember how many economists thought we need a recession to bring down inflation? There was even a major financial news headline, which I'll not reference, saying, 100% chance of recession in 2023. Well, instead, our economy grew by more than 3% last year, and inflation came way down. American households came out of the crisis, American households, with stronger balance sheets, higher incomes, greater wealth. And all that progress is a remarkable testament to the resilience and determination of the American people. They're the one, determination of American workers, of American entrepreneurs like all of you, of American business, is in stark contrast to my predecessor's record. His failure in handling the pandemic led to hundreds of thousands of Americans dying because of COVID. Remember, just inject a little dye, you'll be okay? His failure to lead the economic crisis that followed and to create millions of Americans caused them to lose their jobs. In fact, the last month of his failed term was the last month our economy lost jobs. On my watch, the economy has created jobs every single month for nearly 4 years. Because of you. My predecessor enacted a $2 trillion tax cut, which made overwhelmingly benefited the very wealthy and the biggest corporations. Made you feel good, I'm sure. But guess what? We don't have to hurt corporations. We don't have to. I come from the corporate state of the world. For 36 years, I represented a state, Tom and I, that had more corporations incorporated in Delaware than every other nation in the United States of America, every other state in the nation, the entire nation, in the state of Delaware. But what did his policies do? Increase the federal deficit significantly, more than any other previous presidential term. And the federal deficit went up every single year of his presidency and left office with the largest annual deficit in American history, $3 trillion. And now, he not only would give another $5 trillion tax cut for the very wealthy and the biggest corporations, he wants a new sales tax on imported goods, food, gasoline, clothing, and more. As most of you know, such policies would cost the average American family nearly $4,000 a year. And he and his allies say they support workers in the middle class. Give me a break. On my watch, we created over 700,000 manufacturing jobs. He lost 170,000 manufacturing jobs in 4 years. On our watch, factory construction is at a record high. It increased 210%. On the other team's watch, factory construction barely increased 2%. On my watch, the trade deficit with China declined to its lowest level in a decade. On his watch, the trade deficit with China soared. On my watch, we're seeing a record stock market and record 401ks. The bottom line is, I'm a capitalist. I wish I had more stock. But I believe capitalism is the greatest force to grow the economy for everybody. I really mean it. Now, don't point to the fact that for 36 years, as Tom would point out to you, when they did the income of all the members of Congress, I was listed as the poorest man in Congress. I never thought I was poor. I had a decent salary as a senator. But we face a fundamental choice. For the past 40 years, too many leaders have sworn by an economic theory that has not worked very well at all, trickle-down economics. Cut taxes for the very wealthy, and they deserve having taxes cut, but cut for the very wealthy and hope the benefits trickle down. Well, guess what? Not a whole lot trickled down to my dad's kitchen table. It's clear, especially under my predecessor, that trickle-down economics failed. And he's promising again trickle-down economics. But it will fail again. In fact, President Clinton pointed out that since the end of the Cold War in '89, America has created about 51 million jobs. Of those 51 million jobs in that period, the economy under Democratic presidents created 50 million, in fact, 50 million of those. And the economy under Republican presidents created 1 million of those new jobs. Folks, I've laid out a better choice, in my view, to grow the economy, from the middle out and the bottom up. I promised to be a president of all Americans, whether they voted for me or not. And I kept that promise, making a lot of Democrats very angry because studies show that the laws I signed actually delivered more benefits to red states than the blue states. That's a fact. More went to Republican states than the Democratic states. It may not have been good politics, but I believe it's good for the country. And I kept my promise. Today, we're better positioned than any nation in the world to truly win the economic competition of the 21st century, in my view. And there's so much more we can do. We're going to continue bringing down prices for families by building more affordable housing, making child care more affordable. And by the way, you make it more affordable, it increases economic growth. Growth. By continuing to lower health care costs as well. We're continuing fighting to make sure everyone pays their fair share of taxes. And by the way, I hope some of you out there are billionaires. But paying 8.2% ain't quite enough. If you just paid 25%, it would generate enough income, $500 billion over the next 10 years. We could cut the deficit, be paying 25%, wouldn't it? Anyway, I don't get going, my stuff. But my point is, that includes a story, they extended the child care tax credit to cut child poverty in half. We're determined to lower prescription drug costs, not just for seniors, but for everyone. Helping the federal budget and household budgets, and so much more. I'm sorry to go on so long. Let me close with this. Early in my term, I traveled, to the skepticism of some of my own team and many of the Democrats, to South Korea to meet with President Xi and President Hu in South Korea and the CEO of Samsung. They were manufacturing a significant portion of the chips in the world. And I sat with them and encouraged both of them to invest in America. And they agreed. What surprised me when I asked the CEO of Samsung why he was prepared to invest billions of dollars to build chip factories in the United States, they mentioned two reasons. Because of our workforce, which I know we have the best workers in the world, and second, they said we have the safest and most secure nation in the world in which to invest. And now, as I stand here in front of some of the most significant business leaders, successful business leaders in the country, we also know we have the best research universities in the world, the best in the world. We have the most dynamic capitalist system in the world. And here's what we can't take for granted. We have stability because we have a rule of law. Our democracy is unparalleled. I know I talk a lot about democracy from the first time around, but it's really under stress. For real. We can never lose the democratic principles. American business or economic dynamism can't succeed, in my view, without stability and security that makes us the envy of the world, and we are. 4 years ago, we've gone from a historic crisis to greater progress than any of us thought possible. We did it with a new playbook based on one of the most oldest truths of our nation. Believe in America. Invest in America. That's the truth. Give the American people half a chance. They have never, ever, 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 ever let the country down. Give them a full chance and watch them lift us up to endless possibilities. That's what I see in this room. I really mean this, and I'm not trying to be solicitous. Incredible business leaders, innovators, who embody that sense of possibilities. I spent more time with Xi Jinping than any world leader has. Over 90 hours with him alone. Traveled 17,000 miles in the United States and China. We were in the Tibetan Plateau, and he looked at me and said, "Can you define America for me?" By the way, I gave all my notes in, so they have this. And I said, "Yeah, I can define America in one word, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. possibilities. We're a nation of possibilities. We think big. We believe big. We sometimes fail, but we think big. I'm never more optimistic about America's future. Just as remember who the hell we are and how far we've come together. We're the United States of America. And there's nothing, virtually nothing, we cannot do when we act together. So keep it up, folks. We need you badly. God bless you all, and may God protect our troops. Thank you.
Please welcome Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute President and CEO, Marco Davis.
Muy buenas tardes a todos. Good afternoon, everyone, and I am so very excited to welcome you all to this very exciting special session at the 2024 Leadership Conference of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute. Nobody's here to listen to me, so it is my pleasure to introduce the representative from the 13th Congressional District of the great state of New York and the chairman of the board of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus Institute, the Honorable Adriano Espaillat.
Thank you, Marco. Buenas tardes. Wait. Buenas tardes. Okay, I see that got to you. That lunch got to you. No? Uh-oh, I'm in trouble. This week is a momentous week for CHCI as we celebrate Hispanic Heritage Month, welcoming over 2,000 of you, Latinos from across the country, and recognizing our legacy and the impact and our growing influence across the nation. As we face crossroads in America, the Latino community plays a pivotal role in making sure that our nation moves forward. And at this crossroad, it is crucial that our young people, yes, you, our young people, register to vote and make their voices heard at the polls every time, and continue to lead on the front lines. This is how we ensure that our seniors are protected. This is how we ensure that we have high-quality health care, our families have access to economic opportunity, and our freedoms are protected and safeguarded. We all know that our families deserve affordable health care, quality education for our children, and more good-paying jobs for our community. The person I'm about to introduce will be the leader who is focused on our future, a leader who delivers for us, a champion who ensures that every person, each and every one of you, is able to thrive. Together with President Biden, this person helped create 16 million jobs, including 5 million jobs for Latinos across the country. Get this, she delivered, that's right, she delivered the lowest national unemployment rate in more than 50 years, and the lowest Latino unemployment rate in record. This person has remained a relentless advocate for Latino community, has consistently, yes, consistently worked to amplify our voices and build a more inclusive and prosperous future for Latinos and all Americans. This person is a daughter of immigrants. Yes, this person is a former San Francisco district attorney. This person is the former Attorney General of the state of California and a United States Senator. This person is the first woman to serve as Vice President of these United States. Please get up and help me welcome the Vice President of these United States, Kamala Harris.
Please have a seat. Please have a seat. Oh, it's good to see so many friends. I love you back. I want to recognize Chair Barragan. Where are you? My dear friend, fellow Californian, I want to thank you for all that you do and all that you have done. CHCI Chair Espaillat, thank you for all that you are. Both of them have spent time with me at my house, and we've shared a lot of good stories together and many meals together. And I just want to personally thank them both, because they really, as you know, are extraordinary people and extraordinary leaders, and they do so much on behalf of so many. So thank you both for your leadership and for hosting me this afternoon. And to all the incredible leaders here, it is an honor to be with you again, and to everyone, happy Hispanic Heritage Month. Which in my book is every month of the year. So this is a room of long-standing friends, and many of you know my background. My mother arrived in the United States when she was 19 years old, by herself. And I spoke about it recently, actually. You know, my mother, I was the eldest child. And as the eldest child, those of us who are, you know, you see a lot of things in terms of what your parents go through. And I would often see how my mother was treated. She was a 5-foot-tall brown woman with an accent. And I would see how the world would sometimes treat her. But I'm going to tell you something, and this is where I come from. My mother never lost her cool. She never defined her sense of dignity based on how others treated her. She was a proud woman. She was a hardworking woman. She had 2 goals in her life: to raise her 2 daughters, my sister Maya and me, and to end breast cancer. She was a breast cancer researcher. And growing up, our mother taught us certain fundamental values: the importance of hard work, the power of community, and the responsibility that we have to not complain about anything, much less injustice, right? Because why are you complaining about it, she would say, do something about it. And that's how I was raised. Do something about it. And those values have guided me my entire career. From, as you heard, being a young courtroom prosecutor in Oakland, California. We're Bay Area. 106.1 KMEL. That was our local radio station for hip hop. But doing that work, you know, part of the background on why I became a prosecutor was actually when I was in high school, I learned that my best friend was being abused, being molested by her stepfather. And when I learned about it, I told her she had to come live with us. And I called my mother, and my mother said, of course she does, and she did. And so I decided I wanted to start a career and do the work of, in part, just doing the work of making sure that we protect the most vulnerable. And so I started my career as a courtroom prosecutor. And took on those who would be predators against the most vulnerable. As Attorney General of California, I took on the big banks and delivered $20 billion for homeowners who were middle-class families who faced foreclosure because of predatory lending practices. I stood up for veterans and students who were being scammed by the big for-profit colleges, knowing and many of whom had an immigrant background and were just simply trying to do the best they could to invest in themselves and their family for their future, and the subject of awful scams. I have stood up in my career for workers who are being cheated out of the wages they were due, and for seniors who have faced elder abuse. And I say all that to say, when I stand here before you today, this is not just something that I decided to do, but really is about a lifelong career that has been about fighting for the people. For the people. And for years, I have been proud to fight alongside the members and the leaders of this incredible caucus. In almost all of that work. And the work we have done together has been about so much I just talked about. It has been about defending workers' rights. It has been about expanding health care for more Americans, including dreamers. It has been about forgiving billions of dollars in student loan debt, including for many of the folks that we know, friends, relatives, who again have been burdened by that heavy debt and just needed to be seen. Teachers, firefighters, nurses. The work we have done together has been to create the National Museum of the American Latino. And of course, last year I was proud to be with a lot of the leaders here in Houston for the CHC On the Road tour. So I say that to say that CHC, our work together, has always been guided by shared values and by a shared vision. However, at this moment, we are confronting two different, very, very different visions for our nation. One focused on the past, the other, ours, focused on the future. We fight for a future, for affordable health care, affordable child care, and paid leave. We fight for a future where we can build what I call an opportunity economy, understanding that the people of our country, the people we know, have extraordinary ambition and aspirations and dreams of what they can be, what they can do, are prepared to do the hard work and put that hard work in, but don't necessarily always have access to the opportunities to achieve and realize those goals. So I see an America where everyone has an opportunity to own a home, to build wealth, to start a business. I believe in a future, we together believe in a future where we can lower the cost of living for America's families so that people have an opportunity not just to get by, but to get ahead. And so with the work we have done together and going forward, we will continue to lower the cost of groceries, for example, by taking on something that I think is very important to deal with, which is price gouging on behalf of big corporations. You know, I've seen that happen before. Many of you who have are coming from states where we've seen extreme weather conditions in California, wildfires in other parts of the country, or even in the pandemic, where people are desperate because of these kinds of emergencies, desperate for support, and then some, corporation, and it's very few of them that do this, but then jack up prices to make it more difficult for desperate people to just get by. We need to take that on. We need to lower the cost of housing. We don't have enough housing in our country. The supply is too low, and it's too expensive, both for renters and for folks who want to buy a home. So we will build together millions of new homes and give first-time home buyers $25,000 in down payment assistance. Because look, people just want to get their foot in the door. My mother worked hard, she saved up. It wasn't until I was a teenager that she was able to buy our first home. And the American dream is elusive for far too many people increasingly. And that's why it is part of my perspective that let's just do the work of giving first-time home buyers a $25,000 down payment assistance. Let them get their foot in the door. We need to lower the cost of health care and continue to take on big pharma and cap the cost of prescription medications. Yes, for our seniors, which we have done together, but for all Americans. Because when we look at drugs like insulin, everyone here knows. First of all, Latinos are 70% more likely to be diagnosed with diabetes. And with the support of CHC, we were able to cap the cost of insulin at $35 a month for our seniors. In fact, recently I was in Nevada. I'm in these streets, let me tell you, I'm everywhere. But I was recently in Nevada, and a woman came up to me with tears in her eyes, and she showed me the receipts for her mother's insulin. And she showed me many papers, and I said, tell me what these are. And she said, well, these are the receipts, and I want you to see where it used to cost us hundreds, if not $1,000 a month, but no more. The work we are doing together, the very purpose of CHC and all of the leaders here, includes having a real impact on real people. And I have the blessing of being able to travel our country and see it every day. It's extraordinary work that is happening because of the leaders here. We, because of our work together, have finally given Medicare the power to negotiate lower drug prices with Big Pharma. And understand, if my opponent, Donald Trump, wins, his allies in Congress intend to end Medicare and end Medicare's negotiating power, as they remind us again this week. They are essentially saying, check this out, because you have to ask why, right? So why would you want to end Medicare's negotiating power against Big Pharma? And essentially they're saying that it's not fair to Big Pharma. That's essentially what they're saying. But I'll tell you what's not fair. What's not fair is that our seniors for too long have had to cut pills in half because they cannot afford their full medication. That's not fair. It's not fair that our seniors have had to choose between filling their prescriptions and putting food in their refrigerator or paying their rent. That's not fair. And that's why we will continue to do our work together, including Fight Project 2025, an agenda that would cut Medicare and increase the cost of health care in our country. Because we stand with the people and on the side of the people. We will also cut taxes for working families, including restoring and expanding the child tax credit. Because we know this is the kind of work that must happen if we are to be true to our values and be true to understanding that parents, in particular young parents, need that support. When we extended the child tax credit, cut child poverty by 50%, by half. Think about what that meant for so many families. The vast majority of parents have a desire to raise their children well. They love their children, but don't necessarily have the resources to do everything their child needs. I grew up understanding the children of the community are the children of the community. And we should all have a vested interest in ensuring that children can grow up with the resources that they need to achieve their God-given potential. So I know where I come from. And we have to always put, and I know CHC agrees with this, and this is part of our collective life's work. We have to put the middle class first. We have to put working families first, understanding their dreams and their desires and their ambitions deserve to be invested in, and it will benefit everyone. And together, CHC, we must also reform our broken immigration system and protect our dreamers and understand we can do both, create an earned pathway to citizenship and ensure our border is secure. We can do both, and we must do both. And while we fight to move our nation forward to a brighter future, Donald Trump and his extremist allies will keep trying to pull us backward. We all remember what they did to tear families apart. And now they have pledged to carry out the largest deportation, a mass deportation, in American history. Imagine what that would look like and what that would be. How's that going to happen? Massive raids? Massive detention camps? What are they talking about? They will also give billions of dollars of tax cuts to billionaires and corporations, massive tax cuts, pardon January 6th perpetrators who attacked our Capitol not far from here. They would cut Social Security and Medicare. They intend to end the Affordable Care Act and threaten the health care of more than 5 million Latinos in our country. All based on, I'm sure many of you saw the debate, so on that point about the Affordable Care Act, all based on concepts of a plan.